Hey everybody, welcome back to the asylum. This is part 2 of the CL175 rescue. Today we're going to be working on the fuel system. As you saw in the last video, we checked out everything. It had got the ignition system back working. All it needed was point sanded and one spark plug that had been installed with the gap closed up on it replaced. I could tell somebody had actually replaced the condenser and some other stuff, trying to figure out why it wasn't firing on that side. But what I found was a spark plug that had the gap hammered shut. Go figure. In my last video, I noticed that it had a NGK D8HS, and the only ones that I have in stock were the DH8A. Well, that is actually the correct plug, the D8HA. I didn't realize that. I was just going based off what was in it, which is why you always need to check a manual instead of just simply going by what was already on the bike, because it may or may not have been working correctly. But anyhow, as you see before me, we got the carburetors. These were in a bag. They didn't really look that bad. They're just kind of gummed up from sitting now. I suspect that the misfire on the right side, that was what they were trying to fix. Now if you'll notice, I've already cleaned up the petcock some. That was because it had a bunch of old stinky gas in the tank and I wanted to drain it out before pulling the tank out, but I didn't want to cut the crossover tube. But these tanks have let's take the cap off. The cap cleaned up really good, which is surprising. I haven't put it in any rust remover or anything. I just parts washed it. The crossover tube that goes from here to here on the tank, you have to cut that or pull it apart in order to get the tank off the frame. So, then we'll walk around here. And like I said, these really aren't that bad. If you see inside there, I suspect they were chasing the misfire that it had. The reason why it wasn't running on one cylinder. The float balls are kind of jokey looking, but 5 minutes in the vapor blaster followed by 20 minutes in the ultrasonic cleaner will take care of that. I'm not planning to fully restore this one at this time. I may eat those words later. But as of right now, my plan for this one is just a sympathetic restoration. So let's take a look inside the fuel tank, which although bad, was not great. It's not as bad as I had feared. I don't know if you can catch that on camera or not. I don't know if that is varnish or rust. There's a little bit of rust in there, but I think a lot of the brown that you see there is varnish. So before I go through any rust removal steps, I'm going to degrease and de-varnish the inside of it, which is an important step anyway. Because any varnish that is over any rust would make it that much harder to clean out. I plan to avoid sealing this tank unless it's absolutely necessary. Really, if the tank is not rusty and crusty or leaky, I don't really recommend sealing it unless you absolutely have to. So anyhow, let's get on with this. Go order some carburetor parts, put this thing together, get this tank washed out, and we'll go from there. Alright. I've got the petcock back on. I put a piece of tubing on the crossover line to plug it off. And I taped some plastic over the bodywork to protect it here over the tank. Now basically what I'm going to do here is fill this thing up with oven cleaner. Let me get some rubber gloves on. This stuff is costly, but so I really want to clean the varnish out of this fuel tank. And I have done all kinds of different degreasers and wipes, purple stuff, and any of that, all that stuff. Dawn dishwashing liquid, almost anything. As long as it will remove the grease. I'm going to spray this in here. Oh well, that's it for now. That's pretty much all of that can. Got to let it sit around and dry for a few hours. Well, actually it doesn't dry. Let it sit around for several hours and then rinse it out. And then proceed with any other cleaning steps necessary. As you can see here, I've got the carburetor sitting over here off the machine, partially taken apart, getting ready to start the cleaning process. Right over here, let's walk over here a second. Gas tank is sitting in front of the vapor blaster, and it's been sitting there for 24 hours, filled to the brim with evaporust. There's all kinds of ways you can get your corrosion out of your tank. This one was very lightly corroded, it turns out, so I just used evaporust. I have used metal prep. I've got friends that swear by using electrolysis. I happen to like the evaporust just because I can pour it in there, seal it up good, and go do something else for a while. Meantime, let me cut the tie wraps holding the plastic that sealed up the drain plug and let this all run out. Let's come over here and pull the carbs down for the cleaning. I had set the toppers back on them just for giggles. I got the Keister carburetor kits, and I will use them with caveat. The caveat being, I've never had any problem with the gaskets or anything out of these kits, but a lot of times the jet sizes do not match the OE jet sizes on your carburetors. First thing up, I'll take this gasket off right here. To do a good external cleaning of the carbs and the carb bodies. Then I will pull them apart. Let's take the float valves out. And this is my right side carburetor and this is my left side carburetor. It's not that important really on these bikes. On some bikes there's different jettings from cylinder to cylinder. Like on my Interceptor actually has different needles in the carburetor are different metering rods, but these are identical. So anyhow, let's get this cleaned up and we'll come back. Well, I told you the inside of this tank wasn't too bad at all. Here's a quick peek at it. It's hard to see all the way down in it with this camera, but it's overall not too bad. I can live with that. Well, that's a little bit of exterior cleaning done, nothing major. We'll go ahead and pull these things down. We'll start right here on this one with the idle mixture screw, of course. First thing I will do is turn it in. That's 2 turns. 2.5. That is probably wrong. I will probably get a book out and look up the initial pilot mixture screw setting. But it was set at 2.5 turns. I don't have any of these settings memorized that much, except see if there's a spring in there. There should be. Set of cheap dental picks of your friend when you're working on carburetors. Oh, there's a spring missing out of that one. Oh boy, isn't that just wonderful? Okay, the next step will be to remove, we'll go ahead and take this back off top. All this will be going into the ultrasonic cleaner next. I actually like to vapor blast the exterior surfaces whole before I take them apart. One thing it's really good for is finding cracked standpipes. Spray your, if you point your vapor blaster nozzle at the outlet, if there's any cracks in this standpipe, you'll see them. Let's see now. As I figured, the whole thing would turn. It's not really a huge deal, but it makes it easier to make sure that the main jet is clear if you get it off of the emulsion tube. I have my little 7mm wrench here. I'm not going to push this out, the little brass jet that's way up in there for the needle. I'm not going to push that out. I'm not planning on it. The metering rod looks good. Just the slightest bit of wear on one side. If I feel the need to take it out, I will. Let's check out the pilot jet or the idle jet. Some of you wondering why I'm using this insulated electrician screwdriver? Because it's hollow ground, like so. It fits much better in a screw slot than a regular flathead screwdriver. I'll take out the float valve seat. That's an 8mm. Got a little bit of gasket sealing on here. I will get that all out before I go back together with it. Don't worry, it is not a silicone. It's not really a sealant, it's an adhesive. And there are times when I have found it necessary, but if you have proper fitting gaskets, it shouldn't be needed. But there have been times when I've put stuff back together and have not had the best quality gaskets, even some of the OEM gaskets. So I've had to resort to using a gasket glue. Not RTV sealant, but gasket glue. We'll repeat the process on the other carburetor. We got everything we need here. I suppose there might be an application or two where a parallel twin would be jetted differently on one side or the other. But I don't know. But again, let's check the mixture screw setting here. Alright. One. Alright, this only went to 1 3/4. That actually sounds about right. Now, drop this one out. And out comes the spring with it. So there was another problem we had with that. This one was missing a spring. Fortunately, these springs come in these carburetor kits, so that will make life a little easier. The slide stop right here, adjustment, you don't have to change that. You don't have to pull that out, it's fine. You just adjust it as you need to for your idle speed later. Let's go ahead and pull the pilot mixture jet out. This is actually a slightly smaller screw driver. But I have one. Pull out the float seat. I'm going to open up one of these carburetor kits and see what they have in them. I had these kits already in stock. They're literally Floyd's new old stock aftermarket parts that I've had for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years at least. Get all that cleaned up. There's no point in cleaning any parts that I already have. First, let me get out a magnifying glass and see if I can find the numbers on these jets. I think that says 88. Yep. That says 88. Let me see what this one says. see a number on this one. Neither of these is stamped keying. So these are not the original jets in it in the first place. All the joys of messing with old machines. Okay. Now, the pilot mixture screw is genuine keying, size 35. Pilot mixture jet, excuse me, not screw. And they have the markings on them that say keying. Oh well. Let's see what size the jets are that's in this kit are marked. Okay, that's a 92 jet. My problem I've got here is I cannot positively identify the other main jet, but oh well, I'll try again in a minute. And the idle jets are 38. So, the aftermarket jet kit jets do not match the original. But there's only a slight difference in size. I may try it, and if I have problems with it running too rich, clean the originals and swap them back in. Now let's go get these things in the ultrasonic cleaner. There you go, we've got the gas tank cleaned up. All the parts are cleaned up. I actually went ahead and put the left carburetor back together. There's no sense in subjecting everyone to watching me do two at one time. In the meantime, it's time to start putting this back together. I'll start with the float valve seat. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not using the jets that came with the carb kit because they are slightly oversized. And this is a pure stock motorcycle, stock exhaust, stock air cleaners, the whole 9 yards. And these actually tend to suffer when you put larger jets in them. Some of the later bikes, the emissions controlled bikes, could use the oversized jets. But these early 60s and 70s Hondas, you're better off to either buy replacements for the original sizes or clean your originals as good as you can. Said I've used the ultrasonic cleaner and the vapor blaster on mine. Make sure that the needle jet is still in place, which is the little brass piece that sticks. You should see it sticking out in here. Let's see if I can get that visible on the camera. Believe it or not, sometimes these will fall out when you're cleaning. and get lost. Just like I accidentally dropped that float valve. I guess I'll wait till I get finished showing you everything. So anyhow, that's still in place. Take the 7mm wrench, tighten the emulsion tube down. Take a good hollow ground screwdriver. Make sure they're of the right size and make sure that the jet is tight in there. Now we'll put float valve back in place. And let's install the float. Okay. Goes like here. Shaft goes through like so. Now for the fun part, we have to set up the float valve. On this particular year of CL175, it's supposed to be set at 21mm, so I have my float gauge set at approximately that. One thing I will tell you, I always check them on both sides. The other thing I will tell you, this is something I learned. I used to check them flat on the table like this. But practically every manufacturer recommends that you set them at an angle. As you can see here, this one is a little bit high. I'm going to get my screwdriver and very carefully lift this tab in here. I'll probably go too far to start with. I usually do. Alright, then we'll set it at an angle. Okay, it's still hitting. I'll get a smaller screwdriver. You adjust it by adjusting this little tab in here. Now if the float is bent and the floats are not even, then you may need to bend them down individually, but that is pretty close to being correct. Let me. Alright, that is it. I have those set pretty good. Now here's the thing about float height settings and mixture screw settings. Both the settings that you get in your service manual, which like I said on these it was 21mm, the settings for the float height are approximate beginning settings. Let me put this back on. It's actually much easier to set the float height with this snap off, just because it gets in the way of the flange right here. Put this float bowl back on properly. Everything is in place. Get the new O-ring and put on. Now let's open up this package. It has the new springs. And the O-ring for the float bowl drain. That is all together on that side. Now let's put the idle adjustment screw in there. If you're wondering how this works, the end of this screw goes into this groove right here. This groove right here on the end of the slide, if you see, it goes in and out as it goes up and down. And that's how it adjusts the idle speed. I love my big monster toolbox. Now let's give the mixture control, the low speed mixture control. Screw in. Oh yeah. These carburetors will have two sets of holes on the bottom, so watch out for that. One side is threaded and one side is not. If you're not paying attention, you can at least start it the wrong way. I've already set the other one, the initial pilot mixture screw, setting at 1 3/4 turns out, and I'm going to do the same for this one. As I said, though, the float height and the pilot mixture screw are usually just initial settings. 1/2, 1, 1 1/2, 1 3/4. I checked, and this that came in the kit with the replacement parts is actually a tiny bit shorter than the original, which would result in a richer mixture, which I do not want. So we put this back in. I discovered the slides on these things are there's actually a right and a left slide, so you can make sure that the opening is the right way. Normally the groove that guides it up and down, keep it from spinning around, will hold it in place anyway. Now what I'm going to do is, in order to set the idle's position at approximately the same setting as the other one, I'm going to put the spring in it for now to hold it down. Some people will measure it, put a feeler gauge on there, under the closed end of the slide. What I will do is hold them up to the light like this, side by side, and adjust them until they look the same. Just turn this, back this out a little bit. This one is a good starting point. You want to start with the carbs closely synchronized to each other, because there are no ports. There are no synchronizer, vacuum synchronizer ports on this machine. It's all done mechanically. Realized I had put the old gasket back on that one. For this location, it doesn't really matter, I don't think, but hey, you got new gaskets, use them. going to have to be taking all of this back off anyway to attach it to the throttle cables, which will be a whole nother ball of wax. And sink those as well. But before I even put it on the motorcycle, I'm going to hook these carbs together. I have this piece of wood right here, you may have noticed. It is drilled to match the head. Now, I marked this one CB and CL175 because I actually have another one of these motorcycles that I plan to do a full show bike restoration on one day. Y'all know how that goes. But it's sitting in the corner over there all wrapped up in a tarp. It has sentimental value to me more than this one, even though this one is in much better shape to start with. So I will mount it all together. But first, let's go ahead and hook these two together. They connect to each other like so. This keeps the I think it might be easier for me to do this on the bike, I don't know. Just dealing with these little tiny cotter pins. I can't remember where I got them from, but I bought an entire bag full of them. Behind this adjustment rod right here is what you turn to synchronize the chokes. All the choke flaps are good if you will look down in here. There's actually a flap in the choke. Those are very important to be functional. So anyhow, let's go ahead and mount this thing to my board, hook some fuel up to it and see if it leaks. Alright, here's a little shot of my carbs on my test rig. I don't have a T the correct size to put them together, but this way I can check them for leaks quite well. I'm just having to check them one at a time right this minute. Oh well. Well, the carbs have been sitting here for several hours without any fuel dripping out of them. I think I let them sit for about 8 or 10 hours on one and then switch to the other. So now it's time to drain the fuel out of the float bowls. And commence to installing them on the motorcycle. Now it's important to note these are mechanically synchronized carburetors. And what you would normally do is mount the carburetors to the engine, synchronize them, and then put the air filters and all that back on. But that would mean I would have to remove the pipes, because there's no way to get to any of this under here without removing the pipes again. And I already removed them one time to check the condition of the air filter. I should have left them off. But if you will look in here, I've got the slides set where they're at about the same level at idle all the way down. I'm watching this, and I don't know if you can see this or not because it's so dark, but as I just start up on the throttle, the left slide starts up first. What I'm going to do is turn that screw in. You want it so that both sets of slides lift at the same time. That looks pretty good there. I don't actually have a lock nut on these, which is kind of surprising. Here, let me put the camera in my hand and set it down closer so you can see, hopefully. All right, if you look in there, you can see the slides. As I pull open, it goes through. You want it so that both of these slides move together at the same time. And there's no way with this GoPro camera I can communicate that effectively. Not unless I were to get a pair of them and splice the image together. But that's what you're after. Now, I'm going to pull the cables back out after I put the rubber covers back down. And then mount these carburetors to the engine. And we'll be ready to put some gas in it and fire it up. Hey, guess what, y'all? This thing actually has nice, fresh, mini-looking air filters in it. One less thing to buy. Well, guess what? It turns out it is going to be impossible to put this carburetor back on there without removing the exhaust first, so I can remove the air cleaner. There's not enough softness in the hoses going from the air filter element to the back of the carburetor. So off comes the exhaust pipe. Okay, I've already got the left side carburetor bolted up completely. We'll bolt the right side on, hook up the choke linkage, and the air filter. These in here. I've got the new rubber O-rings in between the intake manifolds and the insulators. I'll show you one thing that'll make your life a lot easier. An obstruction wrench. These work great for tightening up bolts. They're kind of hidden out of sight like this one. Actually, I can come under or over. I do not use power tools when I'm tightening these bolts back up. I use power tools sometimes to run them back together. But the fact of the matter is, there's a lot of very weak power tools can snap these old M6 bolts off with no problem. If I stick with my Ryobi cordless ratchet on there, it'll ring and slam off if I'm not careful. Of course, some people talk crap because the Ryobis are only 18 volts instead of 21 or whatever the other ones are. But they work just fine. I have used, for example, I use torque sticks with my 1/2-inch drive impact wrench to keep it from over tightening the lug nuts on cars. Or anything that I use with large settings. So, I mean, they're good enough, regardless of what anybody else says. I don't have a problem with them. And they're a little bit less expensive. I don't want to go dirt cheap, no name brand. The Harbor Freight stuff is okay. Alright, that is all set back in there. Now we will set the air cleaner element back on. I am actually missing a little clamp that goes on here for mine. That's okay. I actually originally had that clamp on this side, but I moved it to the other side because this one is easier to replace after I get this thing running. There we go, that's the element in place. And as you can tell by my struggles, This hose is holding really tight around that carburetor, so I don't think that we'll have a problem with air leaking. Now let me put this rubber washer back on. Set the cover over it. These might be missing a standoff. I'll look at a parts book later and figure it out. In the meantime, just let me get it all into place here. That is good. Let's plug this drain hose back up to it if I can. It's kind of dried out and stiff. Might not be able to. Might have to replace it. Just get it, just start up over it for now. There we go. Reconnect the choke linkage. That is done. Now we'll run some gas lines and see if she'll fire up. Well, we got some gas flowing into it. Let's make sure the choke is on. Turn the key on. Give it a kick. Move that out of the way. Turn the choke off. Got to speed up the idler a little bit, but that's pretty good. Well, at least she's running. I got to figure out what's going on with the mixture screws and all that and get it set up. But I don't have any way to put the gas tank back on it. I'm waiting on the new petcock. The old one, the gasket was leaking. one to I can smell gasoline a little bit. We're flooding. Well, like I said, that's it. She starts pretty quick, runs okay. We'll have to finish fine-tuning it out. But I think it's safe to call this one a win. I'll keep on tinkering with it, and I will come back when I get the gas tank and all that back on it, and we'll go for a ride. Well, got the old thing idling good, revving good. Finally got the idle menu tuned exactly where she'll zip right up. Now, I just got to come around here, put a clutch push rod seal in it. Everything else appears to be working fine. Once I finished with the carburetor tuning, it was time to fix the oil leak around the push rod seal. The clutch has always slipped a little bit. It's always been extremely tight, and I found out why. It was adjusted way too tight at the bottom, and the clutch push rod was actually bent. Fortunately, I just happened to have another one lying around, so I put it in with a new push rod seal. I also, in this time period off camera, installed bigger pilot jets in the carburetors and readjusted them to get the idle speed right. So everything is going quite well with it. I'll show you how well it runs in just a minute here. Now, when I first picked up this motorcycle, it did not have a right side cover. So I had one here. It was originally off a blue bike. Somebody had basically sandblasted it, painted it with primer. So in order to I wanted a faded looking orange, something to kind of match the patina of the other side. I think I got it okay. I wasn't spending a bunch of money on it. Like I said, this bike is a survivor, and I plan to leave it that way. So I kind of quickly sanded everything back down. Then I sprayed the entire cover with this metallic copper color, which works out good. You can actually see a little bit of it in sheen through the orange here at the top where it looks faded, because these covers should be faded through here, and you want to recapture that. The next up was to use some kind of silver. I just happened to use duplicolor aluminum because it was what I had, and it's a reasonably bright color. And I did the bottom part, not deliberately not going over this part, but just kind of fading it in down below, and a little tiny bit on top around the edges, misting it in there. Then I used the Krylon Gloss Popsicle Orange and sprayed it around here, misted it over the top of the bright metallic brass color, just enough to give it that orange sheen, but not to make it dark. And then finally I came back with some Krylon Alice Chalmers orange, and like I said, just kind of blended it in around the bottom. No masking or anything, just spraying carefully. And the result looks pretty good from a distance. I'm quite happy with it. I took a little bit of, just hand painted the black corner back on and put an original unrestored badge on it. And it looks good if you, from a distance. I'm happy with it, because I'm not restoring this bike. It's getting refurbished as a survivor. I think I'm going to declare this one a winner. It's done. I've been riding it some. I hadn't got it on the road too much. You know, I would never ride a motorcycle around without a title. But it runs good without a license plate. It runs good. Took me a long time. Turn off the lights and stop the engine. I'm really happy with it so far. Everything is working, except, believe it or not, the kill switch. The kill switch on it doesn't work, but all the turn signals, brake lights, headlights, horn, all of it works just like it should. I was having trouble with the idle hanging, which that's almost always a lean mixture. So I wound up actually putting a bigger pilot jet in it, and then just opening the mixture screw until it ran right to compensate for the extra richness. And that's kind of good. That eliminated the hanging idle. It starts and runs like it should. It starts really good. Like I say, I'm really happy with this one. There is a hole in the muffler. I have a new used muffler on the way that's supposed to be complete with no rust holes in it. So hopefully that gets here, I'll put it on. But I'm going to call this one done. This motorcycle is as restored as it's going to get. I have no intention of going through it and restoring it. I wanted it to ride and just to show off a little bit. So, like I say, I had called it a K3 in earlier videos. It's actually a K5. That was my mistake. So I'm going to ride off into the sunset on this one. But until next time, y'all keep riding, keep wrenching, and stay crazy. I wish they'd all kickstart that easy.